It's about building your skills until you can actually have the skill set that can command getting paid for it. And until you have that skill set, you should work for free or discounted rate or apprentice under somebody else. And that's what lawyers do. That's what most successful business people do. That's what people in the trades do. Lots of people have that strategy. I think the part that's frustrating is that they're not skills based. If you're getting credit, you should be gaining skills that then you can go use later down the line. That's how I think about it.
Hallelujah. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando Leduc, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Back with another one, Spaghetti on the Wall, John Mashni in the house. What is up, bro?
Hey, Armando. Awesome to see you.
It's awesome to see you, man. I'm glad you're here. Guys, when you get to meet people that just click, it's one of those moments that like me and John Mashni met, and it was just like, boop. Just like it just made sense, right? And it was like, man, what an amazing feeling. Do you watch Star Talk, the Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast?
No, I don't watch it.
It's a great podcast, but they did an episode on free will.
Oh,
and that it's an illusion, right? Free will is an illusion.
This is actually one of my favorite topics, Armando. So we could just totally scrap everything we were going to talk about free will. I would just go deep on it. I would love it. So there you go.
Great. I've been bringing it up because I just found out about this, and he brought this neuroscientist on, and they're basically saying that like we're just not necessarily victims, but we have our personalities, right? And that's what we're inclined to do, and like we're just really not. The free will, the idea of free will doesn't really exist because of those factors, right? How we were raised, what we were sort of forced into, and how all of those things make us make the decisions. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
You want to go super deep. I mean, I do think it's not as simple as saying like we do or don't have free will, right? Because the opposite of free will is some type of like essentially some direction, right? Some like whatever you'd want to call it, like sovereignty, somebody else, whatever is in control. And so I think it's like this, it's been an argument that's gone on philosophically, theologically, right? For like thousands of years, like does free will exist? And I think it's a super deep topic. And now you're seeing like scientists come on board and try to tell us, hey, like our genetics determine things, are like, it's like a subnuclear level determines things. I think it's fascinating, right? I do think that sometimes we think we're making choices that in actuality, we're being programmed, right? And so that's something I think that's some utility of the conversation is like, we think we have these opinions, but it's in reality, we just, whatever we're watching, whoever we're listening to, like that's what they think, or that's what it's leading us to think. And so it can inform us. So sometimes like we think we make a choice, but in reality, no, we're being programmed. So that's a short version of it.
You know what? I agree with you. I look at myself, right? And I change a lot. I evolve, right? But do I evolve because I have the personality of a person that wants to evolve, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, is it really me changing? No, not necessarily. Like because I'm always the kind of person that's looking and searching for the new thing to evolve, right? So it's probably already ingrained in me to do that, right?
And let me just jump in too. This is, I think, something that I think is fundamental to psychology and understanding people. All of us want to think that we're being logical, right? We're like thinking about something and we made a good decision. But in reality, almost nobody makes decisions logically. It's very rare. They make a decision emotionally, right? Because they want something or they want to believe something, and then they justify it logically. And then logic in our head is actually the justification for what we want to do or what makes sense, right, to our emotions. So I think sometimes we get confused thinking like, oh, we're making a choice here. It's like, no, we're actually choosing based on like where we actually want to go. It's pre-decided, right? Like, and it could be someone like you is saying like, hey, I want to be on the cutting edge of learning and education and being an entrepreneur and being out there. So emotionally, because you feel like that's where you're supposed to be. But in reality, you're just saying like, no, I want to do this. And then I'm justifying it, saying, well, I'm just doing this because I want to be on the cutting edge. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like once you realize like you made the decision internally before you even looked at the data or the science or whatever, like then it's like that's how people think, just understanding that, right? And like even with applying that across the board, like in business or in a relationship, right? Somebody might say like, I want to be in this relationship, and they neglect certain red flags, or they skip over things that might be like a warning, like, oh, don't do this. And I see it in my like law practice, right? Somebody really wants to sell their business, but then and they made the decision, I got to get out. But then they ignore all these red flags, like logically, oh, I shouldn't do this, or I should maybe ask for some extra due diligence, or maybe I should, ask, do they actually have the money to buy the business, right? Like all these things, it's like, no, but they skip over them because they made that decision, right? Like, oh, I just got to sell, or I just got to get out, because emotionally they're done. So anyway, I think it's a fascinating topic.
I think, and to that point, I think that a lot of times when you see people win the lottery, right? The reason why they go back to being broke or going back to their base level is because they haven't earned that place. And so they don't, it's incongruent, right? Like it doesn't make sense to have that, because they're like, I didn't earn this. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, so I have to go back. And so I think that's why you see a lot of these, which is why I think the lottery is just the worst thing that could ever happen
well, I
to
think
somebody.
It's like the old saying, right? There's two kinds of money problems, not enough and too much. And, everyone wants to figure out like, what's it like to have too much? But if you come into, and I actually remember hearing about someone that came into a law office and they actually represented someone who won the lottery, and they actually like essentially awarded the prize winnings in an office, and they were sitting there, and someone did really well like after the fact, because they made no decisions themselves. They literally delegated all the decisions to a team that they assembled, because they said, hey, I've never been wealthy before, I don't know what to do. But many other people get trapped where it's like, because they're the same person before and after, and you realize it's not just money that makes people wealthy.
They brought up a really good story about these judges that were doing these cases of parolees, right? Like, these parole off the convicts would come up for parole, and they would say, hey, there's a really stark contrast from before lunch and after lunch.
Yeah. So like they got way more convictions or way more leniency right after they got back from lunch or the break, right? It's very crazy.
Insane.
It's sad to think about that that's the case. Like someone literally is giving up or losing their ability to have freedom, right? Just based on the lunch schedule.
But it how often, I mean, and Snickers did that whole bit, right? On like, you're not you when you're hungry, right? How often do we just fly off the handle when we have low blood sugar and we haven't eaten, or we got a headache?
Man, this is such an interesting combo to me. Like I wrote a whole article about this. I call it energy management, right? Like, do you understand, like for you, if you feel depressed or you feel sad or you feel emotionally very low, sometimes it's because you're going through something very difficult, or you have pain, or you have some type of struggle. Other times you honestly just might be super tired, right? You honestly just might be fatigued. You honestly just might be hungry. And it might sound crazy to say that, but like, I think you got to rule those things out before you go onto the deeper, heavier stuff.
Yeah. But then again, is that a personality trait?
Yeah, right? I think it is. I think there's certain personalities that are more susceptible to certain emotions and certain triggers, right? If you're like a C-type personality and DISC, or I've heard it called like melancholy, or you're more introverted and very kind of deeper person, then you're prone to depression, right? And I think that's true even in like certain kind of chemical psychological disorders, right? Like you're prone to certain things. Like certain people can't handle whether it's like alcohol or something else, right? Because it's like it's an internal personality or your disposition is just that way. Or other people it doesn't affect them, right? They can just it kind of bounces off them.
Yeah. So when you learn something new, right? Like I just got introduced to this topic of whether or not free will exists. I'm watching this, I'm absorbing it. Now my perspective has changed, right? My perspective now, it was always there, right? The perspective was always there, but now that I've illuminated it, I'm looking at people different. In terms of, I'm looking at people more. I just have more patience, right? Like I feel like I'm more accepting
grace almost,
of a person.
right?
Yeah, because it's just like that person can't help it, right? Like my parents, right? My dad, and I would just like some things that he does drives me crazy, right? But now I'm like, he can't help it. That's who he is. You know what I mean? And so like, there's this almost freeing feeling, because I'm looking at people and I'm just kind of accepting them for who they are, right? Whether they are aware of who they are or not, right? That's a whole different story. But I can see, right? Like my employees, my wife, my family, my friends, right? I'm like, huh. I just feel so much more illuminated to this sort of thing. And I'll tell you what it also has done for me, and I'm a spiritual guy, right? Like it is all by design, right? So I feel like when we're trying to monkey wrench things, right? And we're just trying to force things, it's like, just relax, right? Like enjoy the ride, bro. Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
like there's nothing you can really do.
Let me cut to the chase, because I think the theological basis for free will is so fascinating. There's so much theology on it. And I came to the conclusion that whether you believe free will exists or not, you have to act like there is free will. Like you have to act like your choices matter, essentially. Like if you get bogged down and you kind of get into this fatalist attitude, like nothing I do matters, I don't think that if you don't believe in free will, it means that you kind of become a nihilist and the world's going to hell and everything's going to end up horrible. I don't think that's actually true, right? I don't think it follows, right? So I think in some level, you have to act like you do have some free will and you have some choices and you got to make good choices still. And you have a responsibility to do those things. And that's what makes life fun, right? Is like, hey, there's so much more that we don't know than what we do know, that it's really easy to be humble, right? If you have that context, right? Like you said, you're more gracious to people because you're thinking, oh, well, maybe they didn't have a choice to be where they're at. And it's probably true. Many people don't have those choices.
Yeah. And they're just kind of operating. It has been freeing for me. I've been on my own sort of spiritual journey lately about, what is this? What should I be believing? There's so many different religions out there, and why is this the one and not that one? And and so I think through this process, I'm getting the answers that I'm looking for, which is cool. Like things are, I'm paying attention to the signs, right? I'm like, why did this particular podcast come to me at this particular point? And why am I taking it this way? Because I could take it any kind. I could take it to the way that you're just talking about, like this nihilistic, none of this matters. So if none of this matters, then, whatever.
Yeah.
But then again, somebody might watch that, and because of their personality type, they will take it to that place.
That's right. It's exactly right.
And that's just and that's just their personality. So like it's complicated, right? It's nuanced, right? Like I can't just be like, all right, and we figured out life right now. You know what I mean?
You got to bring it to practical, like how do you apply that, right?
Yeah.
And to some extent, it is kind of academic, right? Like, is it is there free will or not, right? Well, how would you prove that? How would you test that? I don't think it's a scientific test that someone could design and, have a hypothesis and negate, right? So then it becomes a philosophical question, or like I said, theological question, right? And it comes down to, I think what you're getting at, it's like you're learning, you're growing, and maybe you thought I got to choose everything and my life is exactly the sum of my choices, versus maybe you're not so sure about it. Maybe you're like, well, maybe maybe I have been, put here in some fashion for some reason, right? And I don't know what that is.
I'll tell you that, like, that was my philosophy for the longest time, is that I was the sum of all of my experiences. I am who I am because of the experiences that I've had. But now, right? Maybe I had those experiences because of the person that I am and the design of what I'm here to do, right? And like, we're just tools and vessels for,
that's exactly right. Yeah. I think it's, I love this type of conversation. I do think a lot of people think that life is just about your career and making money and, kind of living life. But like, this kind of stuff is important to people because people reflect on it. People think about this stuff. And maybe once you have everything, you start to question, like, well, what's left after that? Right. This is the kind of stuff where it's important to people and it affects people. So I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too. So, and we didn't even go into like the backstory of John Mashni. So John Mashni runs a company called Mavesey. It's a law firm. You guys are doing business and tax, IP, entertainment law, estate planning. And so I'd love to know what I know what it's like, but you can sort of pontificate and talk about what it's like, and the philosophy of how you guys advise your clients, and and when they come in, what are some of the things that they can expect when they work with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way we practice law at Mavesey is really kind of the culmination of years of, or really decades, right, of working with clients, working in business, working as entrepreneurs. Like my partner Michael and I designed Mavesey to be the law firm that we always wanted, that we wish could have represented us in our entrepreneurial projects and endeavors throughout our whole lives, right? I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. Even before I went to law school, I'd started multiple businesses, done different things. And my partner Michael is probably that and more, right? Always, he's much more entrepreneur than attorney, but we're both practicing attorneys, and we both love representing entrepreneurs, business owners, creative people, artists, athletes, people in the entertainment industry, really across the board, right? People that are creative, people that are entrepreneurial. I made a conscious choice when I went to law school. I went to law school 10 years after I started working, after I was done with college, and I'd worked in the business world. I'd hired people, fired people, ran a media department. In fact, I think that's why you and I connected. I went to film school. I just loved media and telling stories, and I was a writer. And so it just, everything kind of, to me, turned from, hey, I'm going to go from the business world to legal world. And I thought to myself, everyone was asking me, hey, what area do you like to practice in? What area of law are you interested? What classes do you like? And to be honest, like, some of the coolest classes were, criminal law, constitutional law, criminal procedure, learning about that stuff. You see TV shows a lot of times are all based on those areas. And I thought those were all interesting, but then I thought more so, well, what kind of people do I want to spend time with every day, right? And to me, the answer was always entrepreneurs, business owners, creative people, right? It just made way more sense to say, hey, go into those areas because I'll spend time with those people. Not that other areas weren't interesting, but I just thought, hey, who do I want to spend the most time with on a daily basis in my career? And it came down to those people. And then I started working with those people and learning some of the things that those people need to know, right? Taxes. I teach tax at a law school program, right? I have a great tax background. I have an IP background, intellectual property, right? I started to learn how some of those entertainment practices applied in a legal sense, right? Whether it's copyright, trademark, some of this name, identity, likeness stuff. So I really tried to learn and gain skills in areas that helped entrepreneurs. And that's really what separated me, right? And I think when I met my partner, Michael, he had the exact same attitude. Like, well, how do you think like an entrepreneur, right? And one of the things that I learned before I went to law school, a very wealthy individual worked for him for a number of years. And he was talking to me about lawyers. And I'll never forget this. He basically said, and have you ever had a time where someone's saying something to you, but you feel like I better remember this because I feel like it's going to be good advice, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those times. I see you smiling. Yeah. And here's what he said: John, you're going to go meet with these lawyers. Just remember, lawyers' job is to minimize risk. The lowest form of risk is zero. Lawyers always want to have zero risk and put you out of business. All the money in business is made when there's risk. So basically he was saying, just remember who you work for. Like your goal is not to minimize the risk, because otherwise we won't even have a business. So your goal is to listen to them, pay attention, learn what the risks are, and then come back and tell me. I had never even thought about going to law school at that point, but he basically said, never let lawyers run your business. And that stuck with me. Even today, I think about that stuff. What's my role as a lawyer? Is it to minimize risk, really? Or is it to help people make good decisions with the skill set and the background and the knowledge that I have? Right. And for most entrepreneurs, it's the second one. If I'm doing work for a big company, right, then it actually is minimize the risk. How do we minimize risk? Or don't do the deal. But if I'm working for someone that's got their money on the line, that is writing the checks themselves, it's the second one.
Yeah. How do you advise someone who has taken credit in order to grow their business, right? Like
instead of money?
What's that?
Instead of money?
Instead of like cold hard cash, they've bankrolled like marketing and masterminds and conferences.
Oh man. So honestly, this is not a hard answer. I did that myself, right? And I actually wrote a whole article called "The Amazing Benefits of Working for Free" about this exact topic. I kind of laid it out. Here's what I did. When I had no clients before I went to law school, I had my own production company, right? Similar to you, not on your scale. But I basically said, I have a skill set, but I don't have any clients. So what am I going to do? And so I basically approached 10 people. I think it was about 10 people. And I said, I'll do a project for you for free. And I think 3 people took me up on it. And then I actually finished one of them. And then in that project, I didn't charge them, but I gained some skills. And then I said, can I use it as a demo reel? And then that demo reel helped me actually get a paying client because they saw what I did. And then I just went from there. And I eventually raised my rates as I got busier and busier. And it got to a point where that was the start of my whole career from a production standpoint. Now, let me take it to the legal standpoint. I did the same thing in the law practice, right? I did not have an in the entertainment industry, but I knew one person, and he said, John, he called me up one day, my first year as an attorney. He said, John, look, I hate attorneys, but I need an attorney for my film. I know you went to film school. I know you just graduated law school. Can you help me? He's like, I hate attorneys, but I like you. And I said, sure. And I gave him a massive discount. I mean, I think 75% of what the time that I spent is what I billed him. But from that one project came almost my entire entertainment practice in my law career, right? I did a good job for him. He introduced me to his partner. I started working with his partner a ton, kept working with him, started working on a TV show, started working on movies, started working on indie movies, then worked on studio movies, studio films, met various other people, went on set. I think I even showed you last time I saw you, I took my son to a movie set. They cast me in the movie because they're like, we want to, beat up our lawyer and, put makeup on him and all this stuff. I got a bowling ball thrown in my face. The movie comes out this fall. Nice. So it's just, all that came from exactly what you just said, right? It's like to me, and I'll just end with this comment about it, is it's not about credit. It's not about working for free or a low fee. It's about building your skills until you can actually have the skill set that can command getting paid for it. And until you have that skill set, you should work for free or discounted rate or apprentice under somebody else. And that's what lawyers do. That's what most successful business people do. That's what people in the trades do. Lots of people have that strategy. I think the part that's frustrating is that they're not skills based. If you're getting credit, you should be gaining skills that then you can go use later down the line. That's how I think about it.
Hallelujah. Well, John, I appreciate you. Let them know where they can find you.
You can find me at johnmashni.com. That's kind of the site to my personal site. You can also find me at mavesey.com for any legal issues. Love to talk to anybody if they need help or assistance or just want to have some fun. I have kind of a diverse background, help clients and help people all over the map. So love chatting.
Yeah, man. I love it. We're going to do this again. I love the conversation.
Love it, man.
And you have free will, man.
Act like you have free will.
Act like it. Thank you so much. And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment for all of your video production needs. Video sales letters, organic social podcasts. We got you. Keep watching. Keep listening. We'll see y'all next time.